what irrational numbers are and what rational numbers are. Hello everyone. In today's lesson, we're going to look at surds. What are surds? Now, before we define what surds are, we need to know the two concepts. We need to know what rational numbers are. Rational numbers, we need to know what they are. And we also need to know what irrational numbers are. Now, these two concepts is what will really help us to define and understand what a surd is. Alright, let's dive in. What are rational numbers? Now, rational numbers are numbers that can be expressed as ratio of two integers. Now, take for instance, you have 2 over 3. This is a ratio of two integers, 2 and 3. So 2 over 3 is a rational number. This is a rational number. Okay. Now, one thing we need to also note about rational numbers is that their exact value is known. Okay. Now, take note, if two integers can be expressed in this form, we say they are what? Rational number, but the denominator must not be equal to 0. So q must not be equal to 0. Numbers like 2 is a rational number. Note that 2 is the same thing as 2 over 1. Okay, so 2 is a rational number. 3 is also a rational number. 3 can be expressed in this very form, p over q. It can be expressed as a fraction or as ratio of two integers. So 3 is the same thing as 3 over 1 is 3. Okay, so numbers like 2.8. 2.8 is also a rational number. Why? It can be expressed as a fraction. Now 2.8 is the same thing as 28 over 10. 28 over 10 will give us 2.8. 2.8, right? So these are basically what rational numbers are. Okay, they can be expressed as a ratio of two integers, just like we have 2 over 3. Okay, just like we have 28 over 10. All right, so the exact values are also known. So 2, 3, 2.8, maybe 5 over 3, etc., etc. They are all rational numbers. Now, what are irrational numbers? Let's look at what irrational numbers are. Now, irrational numbers, of course, are numbers that cannot be expressed as this form, that is, as ratio of two integers. Okay, take for instance your pi. There are about some constants in mathematics that are irrational numbers. Numbers like the value of pi. Now your pi, which has the symbol of is a symbol. Now your pi has a value of about I think 3.141. All right, 59265 Okay, this is basically the value of pi, and it continues. The value continues. So numbers like this are actually irrational numbers. Another one could be your Euler number. Okay, your Euler number, which has a value of 2.7182182, and it continues, it runs continuously. Now these values cannot be expressed in form of a fraction. It cannot be expressed in this form. So your pi is an irrational number. Likewise, the Euler number is also an irrational number. Okay, now there are special irrational numbers which we call surds. Now, if you have roots of integers are also called irrational numbers, like root 2. Root 2 is an irrational number. Okay, root 3 is an irrational number. Now, if you punch this root 2, root 3 in a calculator, like let's see it. Now, this is a calculator. Let's check what the value of root 2 is. Now, root 2 is giving us, as you can see, is giving us 1.41421. It keeps repeating, so it cannot be expressed as a fraction. Okay, root 2. Likewise, root 3. If we check the value of root 3, what is it giving us? Can you see the value is giving us 1.7320, and it keeps going to infinity. So these values cannot be expressed in form of a fraction, so this is also an irrational number, right? So root 2, root 3, root 5 is also an irrational number. Now, this kind of irrational numbers is what we call surd. Okay, we call them surd. They are surd. Okay, now what are then surd? Of course, we can say that surd are roots of rational numbers whose values cannot be determined. Remember that 2 on its own is a rational number, right? But root 2 is an irrational number. So numbers like these are called surd. Okay, example, we also have another root 7 is also an irrational number, but we call it surd. So any irrational number that has roots attached to it is called surd. So surd are roots of rational numbers whose values cannot be determined or expressed as an exact fraction. So we cannot express this as exact fractions. Okay, now take note that when you have roots of perfect squares, you can call them surd. Take for instance root 4. Of course, root 4, we know the value. The value can be determined. So what's the value of this? It's giving us 2. So this is not a surd. We can't call this a surd. All right. Now, another one could be root 16. We know that this is a perfect squares. It's going to give us 4. So we cannot call this a surd. Okay, we can't call this a surd because the value can be determined. But like we checked in our calculator, the value of root 2 cannot be determined or expressed as a fraction. You have numbers that keeps on repeating and changing. All right. So these are basically what surd are. So in this very class, we've looked at what irrational numbers are and what rational numbers are. We said that rational numbers are numbers that can be expressed as a fraction. It can be expressed as a ratio of two integers, p over q, where p represents an integer, q also represents an integer, but q must not be equal to 0. So we say some of the examples of rational numbers are 2. 2 can be expressed as 2 over 1. We have 3. 3 can be expressed as 3 over 1, which is also 3. We have 2.8, which can be expressed as 28 over 10. So all these are rational numbers. And we also looked at irrational numbers, so constants like pi, which has this value and cannot be expressed as a fraction, is an irrational number. Your Euler constant is also an irrational number. And we also say that there are special irrational numbers which are expressed in form of roots, that we call those kind of irrational numbers surd. We say numbers like root 2 is an irrational number, of course, but this kind of irrational number we call them surd because of the root. Okay, root 3 is also surd, okay, because it's an irrational number, right? Root 5, and we say that we can't call root 4 an irrational number because the value can be determined. So take note that roots of rational number whose values cannot be determined are called surd. All right, in our next class, we'll look at rules or laws of surd, and we'll carry out lots of calculations looking at WAEC questions that normally comes in surd. So thank you for watching. Bye for now.